welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 116 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 42, the meaning of life, the universe, everything,
right,
of A Clash of Kings, which is Davos 2. We were so excited to get a new POV character, and then we had to wait 32 chapters for his second entry. So.
Wow, yeah, it's been quite a long time since we've last caught up with Davos. Well, as always, we're going to chat about the chapter. We're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in the chapter. And while I'm talking about that, join us on the Discord server, because it's getting active in there. Even I am showing up now.
You have been. You've been regular on there. You've become like the norm of the Discord server.
I'm up to level 3, which, when I saw that Jenny of Allstones was up to level 19, I was like, I really should visit more often. I was impressed that even at level 19, she was still celebrating these leveling ups with ridiculous gifts.
Yeah, we have fun in there, and your presence just takes us up to a whole nother level. So I urge all of our listeners to come join and hang out with us and talk about silliness and all kinds of stuff that we talk about.
So how are you?
I'm doing well. It's been a busy week.
How so?
Well, in the news and notes, we'll talk about just exactly how busy it's been. But we do have something exciting to announce that will.
I believe for once I'm in the loop. That's one of the advantages of going to the Discord server. You see, you actually get to know what's going to be said on the podcast.
True. Yes.
And you get it. I mean, so when does this episode that we're recording now get published? It's next weekend, right?
Yeah. So this is the day before Halloween. So last week's, the one we recorded last week, will go live on November 1st. So I guess this one will be like November 8th-ish. If my math is correct. Yeah.
So the Discord server gives you a whole week in advance heads up on what's coming. You want the hot take, the Discord server is where it's at.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Good selling point right there.
Yeah. I was blathering on about what I'm going to say on this episode.
Yeah, so all those people have already been like, been there, done that.
They'll have forgotten by the time this one airs, We're so far in advance.
Good point. You all set for Halloween?
In the sense of having done absolutely nothing for it. Yes.
Do you have candy at least?
I don't think we even have candy. Oh, maybe I helped Carson unload the car the other day. Maybe there was some extra candy in there that I...
You hadn't eaten.
Yes, it's been hidden. So I'm guessing it's not for me. Well, actually, she hides the stuff that is for me too.
She only brings it out once it's expired. Yeah, it's been a rainy October, at least the past few weeks, and as you probably have imagined, I overdo our outdoor Halloween decorations, just like I overdo the Christmas decorations.
Yeah, between the two of us, we have a normal amount of Halloween decorations.
Right, we balance out to just about right.
Because I have absolutely zero, and you're a lunatic.
So I've got a bunch of animatronics that sit out on the porch and in the trees and in the yard, but it keeps raining, and they're theoretically indoor animatronics. I don't know why anybody would have a 7-foot tall pumpkin creature in their home on purpose, but mine keeps ending up in my home because I have to keep bringing everything back in every day. So there was like a stretch of 3 days where was hardly anything out there. But I do have a pretty cool thing that I've added this year. In my in our bonus room window, I have a projection of these like ghostly specters that come and go, like they're in the room, Okay. That's been pretty neat. I could keep that going. It doesn't matter whether it rains or not for that. So,
but just a question about that: doesn't that look out onto your backyard, which is fairly secluded?
There's windows on 3 of the 4 sides. It's at the end of the house, so there's a front window, a side window, and a back windows back there.
Oh, I'm trying to. I'm trying to think which room you're talking about now.
Above the garage. If you're looking at my house,
upstairs.
the top left side.
Yes. I see. Okay.
Yes, but it's been a weird Halloween.
I've played video games in that room, I think.
What's that?
I played VR video games in that room.
Yes, you did. Right.
I think that's the only time I've been in that room, actually.
I think you played Job Simulator.
Yes. I was working in a grocery store, as I remember.
Right, convenience store, I think. But yes,
convenience store. Yes. How mundane of a video game was that?
I know, really.
It was virtually real.
There's even an office worker job. And I'm like, only kids would find it fun to pretend to sit in a cubicle. But no one even uses that room anymore because Molly doesn't really go in there. Ethan doesn't live at home anymore. So that's like a huge room that just sits empty in our house. So it's just one more sign that, maybe we need to downsize in the near future.
Yeah.
But it's been a weird Halloween season because this is both Molly and Stacy's favorite season of the year. But Molly has been so busy, especially the high school play is, the production week is next week. And for the past 2 weeks, she has been at the school. I drop her off at 7 o'clock in the morning. For instance, yesterday, Friday night, she didn't get home till 9:45 p.m.
Having been dropped off at 7 a.m.
Yes.
Wow, that's a shift, right?
It's not that unusual for her to be gone that long because of school and then swim. Swim, she usually gets home after 10, but she's been at the school for like 14 hours straight. So we have not carved any pumpkins. She's not even going to be able to go trick-or-treating because she has rehearsal again tomorrow. So it's been very weird. She's very disappointed in that. But, for the love of the craft, I guess she's willing to sacrifice.
Yeah. I'm curious how crazy your Halloween decorations will be the year she goes to college.
You think I'll just stop cold turkey?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm definitely curious to see, because obviously there's a temptation to do that because there are no children in your house anymore. But you are still a lunatic. That won't change.
Do you know what's funny? I don't, in my mind, I don't even do them for her anymore. She appreciates them like a middle teen would, like, oh, yeah, that's nice. But I really do them for the next door neighbor's little boy who's like first grade-ish. So when I add something new, I text him and say, hey, send him out so he can see the new thing I've added. And his dad told me because I keep moving them in and out of the house that it's been freaking him out because it makes them seem more real, that they're like gone 1 minute and back the next.
If they just stood out there in the rain like idiots, they would seem unreal.
Right.
These things seek shelter.
Anyway, enough about that. We've got a show to do.
We do. All right, let's get down to business. Last we saw of Davos, he was being sent by Stannis on a mission to spread the good news that Stannis is king throughout the land.
Yay.
A joyful task, I'm sure. Since then, his liege has sailed to Westeros, seemingly assassinated his brother Renly, and mystifyingly laid siege to Storm's End. Mackelly, why don't we give them the summary of this one?
I like your editorial there. Ser Cortnay Penrose and his standard bearer meet with Stannis and his impressive retinue before the walls of Storm's End. Davos is there, dressed incongruously in armor. All around him, the men seem born to it. Even Stannis looks plain compared to his companions. Davos has been back 8 days, but not yet met with the king. What he knows is from his son Devon, the king's squire. From him, Davos learns that the king is not sleeping well since Renly's death, and that only Melisandre's presence can help him sleep.
Mm-hmm. Penrose has had 2 weeks to consider the terms, complete surrender for forgiveness, but continues to balk at handing over Edric Storm, Robert Baratheon's bastard son. Penrose is feisty and disdainful of Melisandre and her new guard. Alistair Florent assures Penrose that nothing will befall Edric, who is nephew both to Florent and to Stannis himself.
Bryce Caron says that all owe allegiance to Stannis as Robert and Renly's heir, but Penrose counters as to why there are so many absences. Tyrell, Rowan, Tarly, Oakheart, Brienne of Tarth. Sir Gyrard Morgan says that Brienne is the murderer, but Penrose again fights back. She loved Renly, all could see it. Florent reckons that was the reason. Renly married Marjorie Tyrell, and Brienne murdered from a broken heart. Lord Caron vows that Emon Kai swore that it was Brienne before he died.
Penrose still concedes nothing. The vows of all before him are worthless. He points to Caron and Morrigan still wearing the rainbow cloaks and asking how they dare show their faces. Stannis is getting fed up, so Ser Cortnay offers single combat, pointing to the two Kingsguards as worthy champions. Stannis refuses, and Penrose asks if he's afraid. Stannis says he'll take the castle and kill all who defend it. Penrose is fine with that and rides off.
As the king's party rides back, his bannermen press him to take the single combat route. But he seeks out Davos's counsel. The king suggests bringing Penrose's elderly father before the castle with a noose. But Davos is never going to agree to that. He actually respects Ser Cortnay more than Stannis' newfound lords. Ser Cortnay keeps his faith, whereas these new lords have gone from Robert's men to Renly's men to now Stannis' men. Stannis laughs to Melisandre that only Davos speaks truth to him.
Stannis agrees with Davos and hates that he's had to pardon these men when he's punished better men in the past. Davos' missing fingers being the unspoken reference. Davos says he keeps the finger bones to remind him of Stannis' justice. Stannis affirms that it was justice. Good deeds don't forgive bad. Changing the subject, Stannis asks Davos what the small folk of the realm are saying about Cersei's incest. Davos says they cheered for Stannis to his face, but also enjoyed telling the story of the fool Patchface being Princess Shireen's father.
Stannis isn't pleased, but he'll set the word straight after he's taken the throne. He admits he dreams of Renly's death. He was sleeping when the murder occurred, and woke with clean hands, as he says. They ride into camp, and retire to Stannis' rather understated tent, where they're served water by Davos' son Devon. They await a council with Stannis' lords, but he's not expecting anything useful to come of it. When asked his opinion, Davos says the king should leave for King's Landing immediately.
Stannis explains why he can't. It would look like defeat, and he can't afford that look. But he does have a plan. Second in command of Storm's End is Lord Meadows, a green young man of 20. If Ser Cortnay falls, Meadows will surely give up the castle. Davos points out Penrose was looking pretty healthy a few minutes ago. Stannis retorts, so did my brother before he died. Melisandre saw both deaths in her flames, and they don't lie. She also saw that Stannis must have his nephew Edric, so leaving without him isn't an option.
The king needs Davos to do a special mission for him. He's to put his old smuggler's cap on and sneak a small boat into the caves underneath Storm's End. Davos reluctantly agrees, and later that night, he and Melisandre make their way across Shipbreaker's Bay. Seems the castle walls have ancient spells that keep magical creatures out. Their talk turns to Renly's death, and she claims she wasn't responsible for it. However, once they've floated as far as they can under the castle, Melisandre sheds her heavy cloak and reveals she is very pregnant. She births a shadow that looks an awful lot like King Stannis. The shadow races off into the castle. Dun dun dun.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
So this solves the mystery of Renly's murder, of course. I mean, it was a shadowy figure that looked like Stannis that killed Renly.
Right.
So we know where it came from now. I wonder how many times she can do this trick.
I know. She could just... I mean, why even bother taking any other ships to King's Landing? You know,
Right.
Just take Melisandre. You don't even have to go by ship. Just go outside the gate.
Yeah. Can't imagine King's Landing's walls are defended by spells like Storm's End.
Right. Yeah.
So, presumably, in order for Melisandre to become pregnant with the Shadow Demon, she is sleeping with Stannis. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's a magical conception as well as birth.
Yeah. So this comes from Devon telling Devon telling Davos. I was getting tripped up on the right names.
Yes, Davos should have named his child something else.
Right, not quite so close to his name. Devon telling Davos that the king has these nightmares, and no maesters can touch these nightmares. Only Melisandre can help him sleep. And then at the end of the chapter, that's like in the very first paragraph or so, like the very first paragraph or so. But at the end of the chapter, Stannis says to Davos, "Look, I know you don't like Melisandre. None of my people like Melisandre." And he lists all these reasons why. This one says I shouldn't have a woman as my standard bearer, and this one Sir Estermont doesn't like fighting under the heart, the flaming heart, and he says, and none of them like the fact that she's in my tent every night. So it definitely gives that a possibility that there's more going on than just king and council here.
Yeah, I'm sure there's counsel. I mean, she's obviously a very trusted advisor, but
right. He mentions that too, that they don't like that she's on his war council.
Right.
So,
there are physical ways that a gentleman can be helped to sleep by an attractive lady as well. Just definitely feels like it's happening to me. So one thing that Davos mentions is that Devon, who is squire to Stannis, has adopted the religion of Melisandre and Stannis, and it's kind of off-putting to Davos. He finds it a little bit strange, but at the same time, he forgives his son. He is the squire to the king. He needs to share the religion.
Yeah, people seem to be taking to it. Alistair Florent took to it right away too. He's now like, what?
You know what? I have a lot more respect for Cortnay Penrose than I do for Alistair Florent.
Right.
Who was it? Is it Florent that he's specifically referring to when he says, "You change your religion like I change my boots"?
I think it is. Yes. He says, I think Penrose says, "I pray to a different god and bow to a different king," or something like that. Right. He says, "There's only one true God." I think that's when that line is sprung. Somewhere around there, anyway.
So, during the parley between Ser Cortnay and Stannis, all the king's men are dressed in their beautiful armour. This is kind of like a run-off, I think, from Renly's day, when sort of like dressing in their finery was considered the thing to do. They might want to read the room with Stannis, to be honest, because he's there in his boiled leather. He's not really dressed, to create an impression. He's just being practical.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, is this a faux pas similar to showing up to a wedding in white and like upstaging the bride, is it a good look to upstage your king in your splendor?
I guess as long as everybody does it, it's okay. If you're the only one, of course, everybody's in boiled leather and you're in like bright gold,
like neon lights flashing. But Stannis is the only one wearing a crown, which does give him an added bit of grandeur. But I was thinking, this look that Stannis has would play a lot better in King's Landing than the current opulence that the Baratheon Lannister royals are showing, which is such a strong contrast to the squalor that the people are living in right now.
Yeah, and again, I think we've talked about this before, that Stannis comes across as someone who would be a good administrator, and that's in an ideal world, the realm would be run by a single very good administrator at this moment in time, because there's a lot of issues that need resolving.
Oh, yeah. He definitely would appear to look a lot more like the people rather than someone who's just getting fat and rich off of them, So
I do wonder how his religion will play, though. If he takes King's Landing,
right?
That absolutely, the things that need to happen in the realm are crops need to be planted. Winter is coming, and the crops have been devastated in various regions. People need to be setting stuff aside. All kinds of rebuilding needs to happen. And is he going to force his religion down people's throats at the same time? I mean, you could perhaps leverage the good work you're doing to rebuild the realm to sort of say, this is done in the name of the light, the Lord of Light. So maybe that's the way he'll do it.
Yeah.
But it could create a tension if he does try to force it down the hungry people's throats.
Absolutely.
I'd rather have bread, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the Great Sept of Baelor is sitting right there in King's Landing. I don't imagine they'll take well to there being the king having a different god than the seven that they worship. And, the Targaryen kings, especially early on, had a lot of issues with the faith because of their incestual relationships, which many felt violated the word of the faith of the seven. So, bringing a whole new god in, that could definitely have some issues. Of course, if you're starving and someone says, hey, here's a loaf of bread and, some
Courtesy
fresh fish.
Of the Lord of Light.
Yes. You might be like, oh, this Lord of Light's not so bad. I mean, Lord of Light, not so bad.
I don't remember the seven giving me bread and fish.
Right. But, his crown, Stannis' crown, is red gold with flame-shaped points. So we're seeing that even his crown shows that he's further embracing R'hllor. So
Yeah. So it feels like it would be very hard for him to put it on the back burner once he gains the throne, you'd feel.
Yes.
You saw what I did.
I did see. Did you see my eyes light up when I saw what you did there?
I have a cue card that says joke. You can see.
There's a laugh track.
Yeah.
I have to insert it now.
So Cortnay goes through Stannis' entourage, greeting all and commenting on the notable company, which just gives us an idea of all the people who've switched sides, basically. So we get Lord Estamont, who's said to be Stannis' grandfather. Stannis' mother was Cassana Estamont, is that right?
Right, yeah. That one's gotta sting a bit. I mean, his grandfather chose his younger brother over him, who is the true heir. Now, if his grandfather is going to say Robert's son Joffrey is not legitimately his son, so I'm going to stay in the true Baratheon line, I'm going to skip over you and go to the younger brother. Oof.
Yeah.
That hurts.
But it's true of all of them. Yes, that was his own grandfather, but it is true of every one of them.
It is, yes. It's just especially tough when it's your own grandfather who is like, well, I've always kind of fancied Renly a little more than you, right?
Lord Sebastian Errol is the newly the head of House Errol of Haystack Hall in the Stormlands, so another Baratheon loyalist.
Yeah, and then we get the two members of the Renly's Rainbow Guard. We get Lord Cairn, who's Bryce Cairn. He's the head of House Cairn. And Sir Guyard, he's from House Morgan of the Stormlands. And again, both of them are members of the Renly's, I guess now defunct Rainbow Guard. But and those all make sense because they're all Stormland
Baratheons. Yeah,
houses.
Exactly. They're all Stormlands.
But then we even get a few Reach houses that have come over, which is a little bit surprising, being that Loras did not come over. We have Lord Varner, who's Stefan Varner, and he's from a noble house in the Reach. And we get two Fossaways from two different houses. We get Sir John of the Green Apple Fossaways and Sir Brian of the Red Apple Fossaways. And those are, both Fossaway houses are in the Reach, so.
Yeah, but I'm not too surprised. I mean, to me, it felt like if the Lords of the Reach agreed with Renly's claim, then they ought to agree with Stannis' claim. They ought to have done it in the reverse order, but,
Right. Hindsight being 2020 and all. And then finally, now this is a Reach house, but it makes sense because Lord Alistair Florent, who is the Lord of Brightwater and Selyse Baratheon's oldest uncle, there's family connection there.
Right. And so he would be great uncle to Shireen, who is presumably next in line to the throne.
Yes. And as we've talked before, the Florents were once the Lords of the Reach until Aegon flipped the Tyrells to the Lord Paramounts of the Reach. Right. So,
and of course, now the Tyrells are not part of this cause. Perhaps this is the Florents are really hoping for a Stannis victory here.
Yes, which might explain why Alistair was so quick to take the Lord of Light and discard the Faith of the Seven.
Good point.
It's like, I'll do anything. Lord of the Light? Sure, I'll take Lord of the Light. If I get to be Lord Paramount again.
Yeah, which also that actually gives quite a strong driver for the Tyrells to not sit on the fence here. They've got to make a decision. Either they sweep in and tell Stannis, wait, we're in a bit of a panic when Renly died, we're on your side. Or they flip and prevent Stannis taking the throne to preserve their lands.
Squash this rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I found Bryce Caron's comment very interesting when he said that Stannis is Renly's heir.
I know.
Very strange rewriting of history there.
Yeah, I noticed that too when he said it to Ser Cortnay here at this parlay, and I'm thinking it must have been awfully hard for Stannis to keep quiet when he heard that. But it was kind of helping his cause a little bit, trying to tie the whole your allegiance to Renly should now transfer to Stannis.
Right, yeah, I get it. So Stannis has given Cortnay Penrose a fortnight to consider the offer. Penrose sent ravens and no help has come. We did hear that Edmure told Catelyn when Catelyn arrived back at Riverrun that
I think he'd received 3 ravens from Ser Cortnay, and she said, "You could do anything about it?" And he's like, "No, I couldn't do anything if I wanted to right now." So, but I don't know. It's just. So he's given Cortnay Penrose 2 weeks. I think I mentioned this last week in the Tyrion episode when Tyrion prayed for 2 more weeks from Stannis. And conveniently, Stannis has said, "You know what, Cortnay Penrose? I'm going to give you 2 weeks to mull this over." Now
we do not know if those 2 things coincide. Of
exactly.
course.
Yes. We don't know the timeline.
It does feel like they probably do. I think that's what we're being led to believe, that Stannis is making exactly the tactical error that Tyrion hoped he would.
Right. Yeah. It just, I don't know. It's just so convenient. It almost feels a little bit heavy-handed of Martin with his thumb on the scales, to even this out a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's stupid of Stannis to give him 2 weeks. I mean, what's going to change in those 2 weeks? Sure, he could send ravens and perhaps help would come. Why would you give him that chance? Help might come,
Right. Yes. I'll give you 2 days.
Exactly. You've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, make him make a snap decision, he might get flustered. But, Stannis' offer, so here's Stannis' offer. Pardon everyone involved in the Storm's End, everyone there at Storm's End for their treason, not backing him and backing Renly instead. Many of them probably didn't have a choice. All the men are free to go, or they can join Stannis if they prefer, and they can keep all of the weapons and property that they can carry. They're going to lose their horses, but, and that feels like a pretty reasonable offer, especially for someone like we had discussed. I think it was in the Cat chapter during the parlay between Stannis and Renly, where we had discussed that our concern was that Stannis might be too rigid to pardon those who didn't support him from the start.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
Right. But he has shown that flexibility, at least for the 100,000 strong army he's inherited.
Right.
so Cortnay might not have that kind of backing and therefore be more dispensable.
Right, yeah. But
I mean, it is a reasonable offer, apart from the one thing that he won't give Cortnay Penrose, which is like, Cortnay Penrose is unwilling to give up Edric Storm.
That's the final piece, right.
Yeah, needs protection from Stannis because, not unreasonably, I think Cortnay Penrose suspects that they're going to kill Edric Storm because he is a rival to the throne as a child of Robert Baratheon.
Yeah, that's the only reason that makes sense, unless there's something more that we haven't been told yet. Unless there's more to the story that we don't know.
Well, I don't think that's what Stannis intends to do, because what Stannis told Davos was that Melisandre said, when you go to King's Landing and assume the throne, Edric Storm will be with you. So he's not planning to just behead the kid.
Right.
And you hypothesized earlier that it was to prove Robert's lineage, that his children look like a Baratheon, whereas Cersei's children don't.
Yeah, that's what he told Davos and Davos won, as that's why he wanted Edric. But now he's saying that Melisandre saw in the flames that he needs to have Edric. So maybe there's more than just, I want to show him off to prove how little Joffrey and Tommen and Marcella look like.
Yeah. But anyway, the only thing that makes sense to Cortnay Penrose is he wants to dispatch him because he's a rival. In a similar way, Cortnay Penrose believes that Stannis is responsible for the murder of Renly, somehow.
Right. But if you dispute Joffrey as the heir, as Cortnay Penrose seems to have done, backing Renly as king, then Stannis is the clear-cut heir. So is there really a danger to Edric, who is a bastard son that... I know he's raised in Storm's End, so that gives him some cachet or backing or whatever. But he's both his nephew and Axel Florence, or not Axel. Well, he is Axel Florence's nephew as well, but Axel Florence not here. He's Alistair Florence's nephew. He seems fairly safe in two uncles. Hands.
I think that. But this is where Cortnay Penrose throws their treachery in their faces, because they're all promising, nothing will befall Edric Storm, but he's like, how can I trust you people? You were sworn to Renly.
That's
now
a good
sworn
point.
To this guy.
That's a good. That doesn't exactly give you a lot of confidence in their word, or their vows.
Right. Exactly. I will say that. I've forgotten what I was going to say when I said I will say.
But if we take a minute, maybe you'll remember. While you're thinking about it, I'll just remind everyone that Edric was born. Well, he was conceived on Stannis and Selyse's wedding night when Robert had a one-night stand with Delena Florent, who is Selyse's cousin, and so that's how Edric came about.
Oh, yes. I was going to contend your claim that he has no claim to the throne. His claim is dubious, but typically the monarchy hands down from father to son,
right?
Not from father to brother. Now, Edric is a bastard. He's not a true-born son, but he is. Everybody knows he is Robert's son. There's no question about it.
Right,
so
right.
His claim, especially if nobody likes Stannis, his claim isn't terrible. It's not appalling.
Yeah, I take your point. It's just bastards have so few rights, and Stannis is so clearly his brother, Robert's brother, But
Ser Cortnay is clearly fond of Edric. I mean, he's not
right.
He's willing to die for Edric Storm here. So Edric might be a good kid who people gravitate towards. He might be very popular in Storm's End, and therefore he could become a threat. You know, if Stannis gets the throne, but everybody... Maybe he's not a threat to Stannis, but perhaps he's a threat to the succession.
So, to Shireen and her children.
Yes, Shireen. Now there's rumours abounding that Shireen isn't Stannis' child.
Right.
She is disfigured. She is a girl. Edric, on the other hand, is Robert's son. Everybody knows it's Robert's son.
Yep. He claimed him as his. So,
yep.
Yeah, maybe when you said that, maybe when Ser Cortnay says, I bend my knee to a different king, maybe he's meaning Edric.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Yep. But so later on, we get an explanation, kind of toward the end of this chapter, we get an explanation as to why Stannis refuses to leave Storm's End without winning the castle, which has vexed us for quite some time. So he asks Davos, what do you think I should do? Because all my other lords, he kind of guesses what all these other lords are going to propose.
Yes. He predicts, and although we don't know for a fact his prediction came true, we're pretty confident he knows his lords well enough to know what they were going to say.
Yes. So he says, what do you think I should do, Davos? And Davos says, strike for King's Landing at once. And he says exactly what we've been saying. Dethrone Joffrey and Storm's End will come to you with the rest of the realm.
Right. And if I was Edric Storm, I would come to King's Landing and bend the knee and say, Uncle, you're the man.
Right.
You're the king.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And hope for some, cushy job. That's what I would do if I was Edric Storm.
Yeah, maybe be a squire to the king, and then work your way up to knight, and then on the small council, and who knows?
And honestly, if Edric Storm has got potential, why not treat him as a potential heir?
Right, bring him into the succession plan.
Right. Shireen might not be the right choice. We don't know Shireen very well. She might not have any interest. She might, because of her disfigurement, she might not want the public eye.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Yeah. Of course, so Stannis contends that leaving without the castle looks like defeat. And he says, people don't love me the way they loved Renly. They follow me because they fear me. And leaving in defeat will kill the fear that they have for me.
I totally disagree with him.
I do too.
It doesn't look like defeat. It looks like a strategically unimportant thing is being left for a later day.
Yes.
That's what's happening.
If he goes by the mission, if his mission was to come to Storm's End to get an army, which he has now acquired, he doesn't need to take the castle to complete the mission. The mission was, Melisandre saw in the flames, you need to go to Storm's End to get your army. Check. He's got the army.
Right.
I'll be back, Storm's End, or you'll be coming to me, more likely.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's as bad a look as he thinks it is. I wonder how much of it is ego-driven, the fact that he's being held out of his own castle.
That's definitely some of it, but I also think this Melisandre's planted this idea that he needs Edric with him for some reason. And that's troubling. That's keeping him from doing what I'm sure he agrees with Davos is the smart thing to do, which is get to King's Landing ASAP. Right. Which is also why he murders, I assume, we don't see that by the end of the chapter, but why he sends his ghost spirit to murder Cortnay Penrose.
Yeah.
Rather than risking a siege which would take forever, rather than risking single combat which might fail, he murders him because he thinks that's the quickest way to get out of this mess.
Right.
Should have done it 2 weeks ago, honestly.
Yeah. Cortnay Penrose offers single combat as a means to end the dispute, and Stannis rejects it and says, I've got Storm's End surrounded. Why would I chance it all on single combat? And I was like, well, because you got to get moving. That's why. Mm-hmm. You're short on time. You got to go.
The line in the book Ser Cortnay comes back with is it the justice of your cause you doubt, my lord, or the strength of your arm? I like Ser Cortnay. He's a good character.
Too. Yeah. I don't know that I entirely agree with his stance here. I think he's holding incredibly strong to this.
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that he should bow to Stannis because Stannis is his lord and potentially his king, if you believe what we believe. Okay, but one thing I will say is I don't think he 100% believes that Renly is dead. He didn't he call for Renly's body to be brought to him, and that never happened.
He did.
So I think there's a little bit of skepticism. I mean, he probably thinks, well, he must be dead, otherwise all of these guys wouldn't have switched sides. But he thinks Stannis did this, and therefore Stannis has lost the rights. Fratricide is unforgivable. I'll raise Edric Storm to be Edric Baratheon, and he's the Lord of the Stormlands now.
I hadn't thought about the fratricide aspect. That could be weighing. He hasn't mentioned it, but that could be weighing into his what seems like unreasonably strong belief to not let Stannis into this castle.
Right. So Stannis is glad of Davos' presence. Davos gives him the hard truths that others won't. And also, not so many stupid opinions either. I mean, the others... when Stannis lists what the others will say, all of their opinions are daft and ridiculous. But Davos is actually giving him the smart route out of things.
Yeah, he's the one that says to Stannis that basically... I respect Ser Cortnay Penrose more than I do these new lords of yours because at least Cortnay Penrose is keeping his faith. He promised Renly he wouldn't let you into the castle, and by golly, he's sticking by it. Meanwhile, these new lords of yours, they were Robert's men. Then just a month ago, or just a week ago, they were Renly's men, and now this morning they're your men. So,
and I think he then asks, who will they be tomorrow?
Yes, I believe he does. Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. And, Stannis agrees. We mentioned this in the summary. He agrees, and he hates that he had to pardon them when he's had to punish better men, and his line is, fingers and all. When Davos says, well, you need these men to win your throne. And he says, yeah, fingers and all. And of course, just a quick reminder, because we haven't seen Davos in, what did you say,
32 chapters.
32 chapters. That's a reference to after the siege, the last siege of Storm's End, when Renly was stuck on the inside. I mean, when Stannis and Renly were stuck on the inside. After the siege was lifted, Stannis raised Davos to a knight for his onion smuggling delivery business, where he was keeping the people inside Storm's End alive, but in the very next move, cut off the top joints of all of the fingers on Davos's left hand, because prior to that, he had been a smuggler, and
the reason he was good at smuggling the onions in was because he was a smuggler. So.
Right.
And I think Stannis' line here is that good deeds don't offset bad deeds. The bad deeds still need punishment. So.
Right, which is a little bit, so at the end of the chapter, Melisandre, they're talking about whether Davos is a good man or a bad man, and he says, I'm a gray man, I've done good and I've done bad. And he says, what about you? And she says, oh, I'm good. And he says, what about Renly? And, but she says to Davos about him being, a gray man, she says, if there's rot inside an onion, isn't the onion bad?
Right. If the
rot
is only in one half of the onion is bad. Yeah.
Right. Which kind of goes the opposite of what Stannis is saying. Is there's good and bad in you, and I praise the good and punish the bad. And she is like, well, if you're bad, then you're all bad.
Right.
So, anyway, so there's this kind of a cool back and forth between Stannis and Davos, where Stannis points out that even those who back Joffrey and Robb Stark are doing so because they believe in the rightfulness of the king, the rightfulness of the king's claim. Meanwhile, he's basically, telling Davos, yeah, I get it that these lords can't be trusted, because these lords, these new lords of his, backed a usurper who was known as a usurper just for the chance of glory.
Right. Yeah, they're actually the worst in the realm. They're
right.
Yeah, good point.
So that would make it even more difficult. It's not like they just didn't know that, the people who are backing Joffrey are backing him either because they're too scared not to, or because they honestly believe that he is Robert Baratheon's son.
Right, which in the absence of DNA tests, he's Robert Baratheon's son.
Yeah, and Stannis is saying, at least that's understandable. They really believe that he has the rightful claim to the throne. These guys, on the other hand, they knew what they were getting into and willingly went and did it.
Yeah. So Stannis asked Davos about what the small folk said about Renly's death. The previous Stannis chapters, Davos was sent around to spread the word of the Lannister incest and therefore Stannis' claim to the throne. Davos said, everyone hailed King Stannis in his presence, but he said, I have no idea what they said once I'd left. But he heard just as often the story of Selyse and Patchface, which is what Peter Baelish suggested and threw out as a counter to the Cersei and Jaime incest.
Right.
So it's working perfectly. The people hear these two conflicting stories, two offsetting stories, and what do? If you believe one, why don't you believe the other? There's no evidence either way.
Yeah, you'd think with that level of public relations ability on the small council, they would have done a better job with their public relations within the city itself.
Yeah, but you do have Joffrey as the king. It's much easier to make a claim for Joffrey to be the king distant from him.
Good point. That's a good point.
If you can see him up close and personal, you don't want him to be king anymore.
Stannis responds to Davos about this, that Robert could piss in a cup and men would call it wine. I give them pure water and they squint in suspicion. And he often makes these kind of comparisons about him and Robert. And I don't know that he ever stops to consider why these things happen. if you're just looking at the surface, Robert is gregarious and fun and easy making friends and allies. And Stannis is the exact opposite. He's cold and abrupt and generally runs people the wrong way. Just in this chapter alone, he offended all his new lords by saying that they chatter like magpies with less sense. And Davos noticed that they're probably not used to hearing that kind of stuff from Renly.
Right.
But when you get to truly know them the way Davos and Maester Crescent had, then you learn that Stannis is actually an honest and fair, sometimes almost to the fault of going too far with his fairness, man. And, maybe he would make a better king because of that.
Yeah. But it's you're right. He doesn't seem to have that sort of self-reflection. He puts it down to sort of the stupidity of people in just loving Robert for being himself. Right. But he doesn't see that the flip side of that is Robert was lovable, and made himself lovable by his actions. I'm thinking about stuff that happened before this book started, because obviously what we knew of Robert, he didn't do anything to make himself lovable, really. But he was, like you said, he was gregarious and likable. And right. That's why people gravitated towards him. And Stannis could try. He could try to do those things. It doesn't mean you're betraying yourself if you try to be likable on top of being rigid and fair and just. Right. You could try to mix both together.
Yeah, it's funny. The people that really know him really respect and love him.
Absolutely. Right, so. Absolutely. And he deserves it to a certain extent, but you don't have to be only one thing. Your character can have other facets to it.
Yeah, good point.
And he's showing it here. If he was true to the character which he seems to be almost in slavish thrall to, he would behead all of these guys behind him.
Yep, you're right. He's being flexible.
Yeah, he is capable of flexibility. And so if you're capable of flexibility, you're capable of putting on a show.
Sure, yeah. Might have to learn to do that.
So Renly's death comes up, and Stannis talks about dreaming of it with detailed accuracy, which gives us, now that we know what happens at the end of this chapter, that sort of gives us some insight here. So this is not just a sort of reflection of Stannis. This is Stannis' spirit, which is going off to do these murders.
Possibly. I had that same thought. Yeah.
Yeah, because he witnessed Renly's murder. He knows what went down, even though he personally wasn't there. And like he says, rather self-incriminatorily, he says, I woke up with clean hands. Clean hands, I tell you. It's like, okay, right. Wasn't asking.
That statement, for one who we just talked about being so honest and direct, he's absolving himself rather easily here. He knows what part he played. He's literally just sending Davos and Melisandre to carry out the same task with Cortnay Penrose.
But nobody else knows. Only Melisandre. And at this moment, when he says it, only Melisandre knows. Nobody else.
Yeah, right,
so
right.
This is just a sign of a guilty conscience. If you start spurting why you're innocent, when you are in fact guilty, that's just your guilty conscience coming through.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, then later, when they're in the boat together, Davos asks Melisandre if she killed Renly, and she's like, wasn't me. Right. So, I just find it odd that they're both being so untruthful about it. Because,
I think she's being...
like on the very next page, she births another shadow assassin.
But this is her point. She's like, it's not me doing it. It's Stannis. I'm just giving him the opportunity. I'm providing him in the same way. And she actually says, whose hand is on the tiller? Who's rowing?
Right.
You're just as involved in this as I am.
Yeah.
The person doing the killing is Stannis.
Yeah, and the shadow looks just like Stannis, so she could say, it doesn't even look anything like me. So
right, yes. Kids, eh? What are you gonna do?
But then, so before they go out on their little boating adventure, while Davos and Stannis are still talking, Stannis mentions Renly's peach again. And remember, back in Cat 3, during the Stannis and Renly parlay, Renly pulled out a peach and offered it to Stannis. Stannis mentions all this in the chapter. Stannis refused it. And it's really bothered Stannis and confused him, this whole peach offer. And I went back and looked up what the exact offer was. It was something along the lines of, you'll never have tasted anything so sweet. A man should never refuse to taste a peach. He may never get the chance again. Life is short, Stannis. And then I'll read it again. I read it then. George Martin's take on the peach was that the peach represents pleasure, tasting juices of life. Stannis is a man concerned with duty. And with that peach, Renly says, smell the roses, because Stannis is always concerned with his duty and honor and what he should be doing, and he never really stops to taste the fruit. Renly wants him to taste the fruit, but it's lost. That was Martin's take on it. So I don't know. I've been thinking about why it bothers him so much, or why he's fixated on this peach offer when there's been so much else going on here. And I thought, but maybe the peach reminds Stannis of Renly's playfulness, that just the easy way that he enjoyed life. He mentions in this chapter that he grieves for the boy that Renly had been, not for the man he'd become, but for the boy that he had been. And Stannis probably had a big hand in having some element of raising him, since his parents died when Renly was so young.
Yeah. I think also the other thing is, it's the words that Renly used, because he was talking about the fact this might be your last peach. You know, we're going to go to battle. This could be the last peach you ever did. And Stannis knew at that time that was going to be the last peach that Renly ever ate. You know, and I'm sure that plays on his mind going forward as well.
Right. That's a good perspective. Yeah. I was thinking also maybe that he was thinking about now all that they could have accomplished together if Renly had just done what he was supposed to do and back his older brother. So that mixed with his role in Renly's death and the nightmares that he's having might cause fixation on this peach.
Strategically, Stannis admits that Loras might have got to Bitterbridge and taken the foot soldiers. You remember how all this sort of came down. Renly raced ahead with the cavalry to Storm's End to face Stannis, leaving the foot soldiers at Bitterbridge. So there's a huge army at Bitterbridge. And we know Loras got there. I mean, because basically Stannis didn't lay chase. He stayed here at Storm's End with this pointless siege. And of all the people in the world who should know how difficult a siege of Storm's End is, Stannis Baratheon should be number one on that list.
You'd think Cortnay Penrose might have mentioned that.
Right.
He did remember the name of this castle, Storm's End, when he said, I'm
going
to bring a storm down on you.
Yeah. So, if Loras has, taken those men and got them sworn to a different, like we said, the Tyrell's future hangs in the balance here a little bit, and they need to make a decision. And those 100,000 men at Bitterbridge could be a very useful thing to have on your side.
Sure. Now, you could certainly see, you would almost expect the Reach soldiers and lesser lords to follow Loras, because the Tyrells are the Lord Paramounts of the Reach. If he says, we're going west back to Highgarden or whatever, they're going to follow. But you would think the Stormland soldiers and lesser lords would likely go with Sirs Errol and Parman, that's who Stannis sent to go fetch all these this force, because their lords are sworn to Storm's End. So there'll probably be a lot of confusion, and I guess it depends on how persuasive Sir Loras is.
Right, and I think what you do perhaps is you try if I was Loras, I would try to keep them on my side in the name of Renly. Renly was murdered, and murder is a bad thing. He wasn't killed in battle. He was murdered in his tent by an agent of Stannis Baratheon. Stannis has given up all rights by doing this. Now, stay and fight with me, and we'll make sure a real king is put on the throne. Who that is, we don't know. We don't know where the Tyrell's thinking is, but that's what I would argue to those people.
That's an interesting thought, because it depends on what Loras believes happened, because what the hell is his name? Because Emyn Kai told Loras, and we learn in this chapter, Bryce Karen says this, that Emyn Kai told the tale that it was Brienne of Tarth that killed Renly, but we know that Cat told Robar Royce that it was a shadow monster that killed Renly. So you wonder if Robar Royce ever got the chance to say, well, no, Catelyn Stark, who was in the room, said it wasn't Brienne of Tarth, it was this Stannis-looking, sinister creature.
Yeah, that would definitely help Loras's case, but it doesn't matter to Loras. If it was Brienne of Tarth, she was working on Stannis Baratheon's instructions, you know.
Possibly, yeah, you could certainly spin it that way, I guess.
It wouldn't be spin. I mean, the only person who benefits from Renly's murder is Stannis, and so if you're Team Renly, you blame Stannis for this murder no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if he wakes up with clean hands. And loudly trumpets that to all who will listen.
But then the chapter wraps up with Stannis getting a final pledge of fealty from Davos. And once he's got that, he sets up his plan. He says Ser Cortnay's going to die. And then this young Lord Meadows is going to be the next in command. And he's cousin to the Fossaways, who were in Stannis' retinue earlier. And that they're pretty sure that Lord Meadows is just going to forfeit the castle because he's young and green and, you know. And that's what confused Davos thinks, I don't know, Cortnay Penrose looked pretty healthy just a few minutes ago. and then, of course, Stannis goes on to explain that Melisandre saw Cortnay Penrose's death in the flames and saw that if Stannis went to Storm's End, instead of going to King's Landing, he would get the army that he needs. And Davos is smart enough to realize that, well, you got the army that you needed because you went to Storm's End, and then Renly, who was on his way to King's Landing, had to derail himself and come to Storm's End. And also that in order for this Cortnay Penrose thing to happen, you need me to take Melisandre into Storm's End to make it happen. And it just reminded me of your point about these sort of prophecies, how they tend to cause events because a prophecy has been made to make them come true. Right.
The quintessential Macbeth thing.
Yes, right.
Macbeth would never have murdered Duncan had he not been told by the three witches that he would be king. That's what made him murder the king.
This is supposed to be spoiler-free, but only a Song of Ice and
Fire. That's a spoiler for Macbeth. So Melisandre needs to get inside the walls before she can give birth. Apparently the shadow creature wouldn't be able to go through the walls himself or scale the walls himself.
Right. Do you remember in the background history of the Cat 3 parlay between Stannis and Renly, I mentioned that during God's Grief possibly got help from Bran the Builder and or possibly the Children of the Forest to build Storm's End so that the gods wouldn't be able to blow it down. And
because previous incarnations of it did get blown down.
Yes, and there are similar spells that prevent magical creatures from passing through the wall in the north, so it is said. So, you know, Bran the Builder and the Children of Forest may also have been involved in the creation of that as well, so.
Yeah. Okay, background. What have you got for us?
So Davos tells us a little bit about House Penrose at the very beginning of this chapter. We learn that their sigil is a crossed white quills on a russet field, which, if you didn't know what color russet was, it's brownish. I didn't know, so. And semi-canon sources say that their house words are, set down our deeds, which is a little bit ironic in that Ser Cortnay won't set down the deed that Renly set him to, but I don't think it was meant in that way. But anyway, their seat is called Parchments, which is in the Stormlands, and they obviously owe their fealty to House Baratheon, apparently Stannis Baratheon excluded. Mm-hmm. But House Penrose was once tightly associated with the Targaryen royalty. On multiple occasions, Penroses wed Targaryens.
Well, hang on, just before you carry on. Perhaps we have another motivation for Cortnay Penrose. Perhaps he's holding out for a Targaryen to come back from Essos.
Oh.
He's actually intentionally trying to delay.
That is something that... it's been a while since a Penrose and a Targaryen wed.
Do carry on.
Anyway, so the first reported wedding, at least that I could find, was between Princess Aelena Targaryen and Lord Ronald Penrose, and that was back in the late 100s, early 200s. Ronald was the princess's second husband, her first having died on their wedding night after consummating the marriage, he was quite elderly.
Okay.
She became pregnant and bore a son that she named Viserys. Of course.
Which was her first husband's child.
Yes.
Okay.
That was her first husband's child. Of course, there was suspicion regarding the boy's parentage because in true Targaryen fashion, Olenna was in love with her cousin, Alan Velaryon. She then married Lord Ronald and Lord Ronald became Master of Coin for King Daeron II, despite not being very good with numbers. It's believed that Olenna handled those daily duties of that task.
Huh.
And that couple had 4 kids together before Ronald died. And we've even had a Penrose as queen once upon a time. Again, like a true Targaryen, Princess Aerys Targaryen married his cousin, Lady Eleanor Penrose. Unfortunately, the pair didn't have much of a spark in the bedroom. It's rumored that they never even consummated their marriage. When the prince became King Aerys I in 209, his small council urged him to replace Eleanor with a new queen. However, the couple stayed together as king and queen, never having any children. And when Aerys died, he left the throne to his youngest brother, Maekar, who also happens to be our friend Aegon the Fifth's father.
Okay. So comparison with the television show. The whole pointless waste of time that is the Siege of Storm's End. Stannis on the outside edition. There are 2 editions of the Siege of Storm's End. This is Stannis on the outside edition. Was entirely skipped by the television show. From Renly's murder, I won't tell you what happens next because that will be a book spoiler, but he does not dawdle at Storm's End after Renly's murder. He takes his new army and uses it in a more productive manner. The scene where Melisandre gives birth to the Shadow of Stannis was witnessed by Davos, but that was for Renly's murder. It was only the trick was used just one time, and Davos witnessed it kind of unnecessarily. I mean, obviously, Davos was necessary for this one because it involved silent rowing.
Right.
And smuggling kind of thing. But for Renly's, there was no real reason for Davos to be present. They contrived something with like castle walls and a sewer so that he went with her. But anyway, he witnessed it, but that was for Renly's murder. So he had first-hand knowledge of Stannis' guilt in Renly's murder from before the murder actually happened. Here, he's only having his suspicions confirmed after the fact.
Right. Okay.
So that's it. Yeah, there's nothing else really for this chapter because none of all this happens in the TV show. Pedantry, I don't really have anything for this one. I'm sorry.
Aside from the general point of the siege in the first place.
Well, okay.
But that's a character decision, not pedantry.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
you can make an argument for it.
Okay.
Sort of.
News and notes. Let's start with the review first, and then we'll get onto the news after.
Okay.
I'll do the review. This is from Lord Kenley on Apple Podcasts. Fantastic podcast. I can tell there's a lot of work and research that goes into these podcasts. Thank you.
Yes,
thanks for keeping it all straight, so I don't have to. That's nice. I like that. And
our pleasure.
You said we've got some news. Do tell.
We have news. I hope you've stuck around long enough to hear the news. So we went and did a thing. We have launched a merchandise shop.
How exciting.
A lot of you have asked if and when we were ever going to have merchandise available, and we went and launched a site. Now it's pretty basic, at least as we're recording right now. All that's on there is a t-shirt, one with black lettering, one with white lettering. But we'll add more stuff. We're working on some possible sweatshirts, trying to get it just right before we add them.
The sweatshirts are going to be nice. They're going to be a little pricey, but they're going to be nice. I'm definitely getting one of those.
So the website is ghostofharrenhal.threadless.com. But all of the show notes, like you just go into the show note and there will be a link to it in there. And I'm going to try and go back through all previous 115 episodes and add the link as well. So, and going forward, of course, it will be in all of the show notes. So if you're interested, just go through the show notes here of this episode and click on the link and check it out.
You know that your mum and dad really want Ghosts of Harrenhal t-shirts for Christmas. Come on.
And your kids.
I'm not talking to you, Mackelly. I'm talking to the listeners. Every one of you.
And your kids and your cousins and your nieces and nephews.
It's certainly true of me. That's all I'm buying for people.
It's pretty cool. It's we'll hopefully it's the shirts are cool. They were what you might refer to as Mackelly Ray originals.
Oh yeah, you did all the work there, and they look good. They really do. I'm impressed by your work here, Mackelly.
Well, thank you. It wasn't easy. I will say that, but
I know you put in a shift.
Hopefully, the design that I came up with is acceptable to everyone. We showed it on the Discord server and got positive reviews there. So,
all right, we are way over time. Let's draw a line under this one. So. Stannis' transition seems to be complete.
He's so at the start of the prologue, start of this book, he seemed to have little use for Melisandre. He basically tolerated her because she was kind of Selyse's thing, this whole Lord of Light and Melisandre. And then in Davos 1, he looked like he was just tolerating that whole spectacle that was the burning of the statues of the seven and the whole catching the sword on fire and all that. And he straight up told Davos he didn't believe in gods and he was only using Melisandre because she caused people fear. But then in Cat 3, Melisandre was his standard bearer. And now here we are, and he seems to be fully embracing both her and R'hllor. And I don't know, is it the shadow assassin?
Yes, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, she is coming up with the goods here. That will make anyone convert,
Right, yes.
She is moving his chances are moving along at a great pace because of her and her only. He would have lost the battle to Renly had it gone to a battle.
Oh, yes, absolutely. He would have lost that battle.
So he'd be dead and gone were it not for her. But now he's got an army behind him. He's got everything he wants.
And a lot of it's thanks to her and this, and her capabilities. And she says it's through the Lord of Light. You wonder if she had gone to a sept and prayed for all this to happen, if she would have had similar success.
I'm going to say no. The Seven have not come up with a shadow assassin anytime soon, as far as I'm concerned. But this whole thing has got to shake Davos' faith in Stannis. I mean, this is not the guy he signed up to be lieutenant to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't seem like Davos has the same faith in R'hllor.
No.
So might that cause fractures between him and Stannis.
But again, I will say that the Seven have never demonstrated their existence to Davos. R'hllor just has, like literally. It was like, oh my goodness, she can do things that humans can't do.
Solid point.
But it will be difficult for him to look Melisandre in the eye again, I mean, having seen what he's seen. In these days, men were typically not present at births.
Yeah. She's nothing if not effective. I mean, we don't know how things are going to go for Ser Cortnay, but she could possibly be 2 for 2 with removing obstacles from Stannis' success path.
Right, exactly. I mean, it feels like the shadow monster is not stoppable. How could you fight it? It's a shadow, but it has enough physical existence to kill you, so it feels like it's pretty much irresistible.
Yeah, and I think you've made enough of a case for why Ser Cortnay Penrose is protecting Edric so ardently. But he's risking everyone's life, everyone in the castle's life. I mean, that's a hard position to be put in. But especially when Stannis and Sir Alistair Florent, who are both of Edric's uncles, say, well, at least Alistair has said no harm will come to the boy. But,
I will say, I've made a lot of cases, but I do think he should give him up. You've promised me you won't harm the child. Here he is.
Yeah.
Throw the doors open. That's actually what I think he should do. But right. I admire his tenacity and his backbone.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, the same issue that Cortnay Penrose has of not being able to trust Alistair Florent at his word because of all his changes in allegiance. how much can Stannis trust these new lords? They've changed sides at every possible opportunity, basically. So,
Right. Yeah.
Have to see how
And
that
Stannis has waited just as long as Tyrion wanted him to wait before he heads to King's Landing. So, has Melisandre seen what will happen if they hang around for 2 weeks in the flames?
It's funny that hasn't come up yet. She's seeing all these other things. She hasn't turned her eyes towards King's Landing and what's going on up there.
We shall see. All right. As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
And we also have our new merchandise shop. So go check that out as well, please. And if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving us a 5-star rate and or a glowing review, as Lord Renly did here, we certainly would appreciate that. It would help us out a great deal. And if you do leave us a glowing review, we will certainly try to read it in a future episode.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.